This is the second video that I've made on the subject of Tarek Fatah, the controversial Pakistani-Canadian author and broadcaster and general gadfly. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to the first one, where I solicited the opinion of Muslims regarding exactly what it was that Muslims were likely to find offensive about Mr. Fatah. I agree that he's a combative person, but there are other combative people out there, journalists and broadcasters. It almost goes with the territory when you're a journalist. Having said that, the general objection to Mr. Fatah comes down to two major points. The first one is his cavalier view, or what's perceived as his cavalier view or dismissal of the good parts of Islamic history, or even the great parts of Islamic history. It seems that the consensus is that he's simply discounting any age in which the Islamic world may have actually been a civilizing influence on the entirety of humanity. And as somebody who fancies himself an amateur historian, I've got my ring that says history on it, and not that that's really worth anything. I have to agree that there were very long periods of time where Islam was indeed a civilizing influence on the planet, or I wouldn't even necessarily say Islam, but Islamic civilization, or the civilization that was underpinned by the Islamic faith. That is the case is undeniable. And to just sort of throw that away is a little bit disingenuous. Although I understand the need to debunk the idea of some perceived golden age, because a lot of people, a lot of religious people, although not necessarily religious, have this unrealistic view of some wonderful period in the past where people were closer to God, where people were simpler and better and braver and uncluttered by complications, and things just were the way they were supposed to be. Now, this isn't peculiar to Islam. Any American will know that that's a powerful streak in the American psyche as well. Even non-religious Americans, this belief that things were better long ago, or even just in the recent past, and that things are going downhill. This idea, I think, has to be addressed, because one of the most insidious things about any sort of belief in some sort of golden age in the past is the fact that a lot of people sort of say, well, let's get back to that, and how do we get back to the simplicity of the good old days? Well, we root out and crush the corruption of the modern age. Now, I'm not saying everyone who believes in a golden age does that, but I can see how that is a potential intellectual and even political minefield. What do you do about the fact that we're not in the Garden of Eden anymore? It's a question that can be, in some ways, frightening. The second major issue is that he's perceived as someone who's breaking ranks with the larger Islamic community and practically siding with the enemy. I can see how that might be something to really give people pause, because I have to confess, I feel that myself. I try not to see the religious right in Canada, or the nationalist right wing in Canada, as the enemy. They're just people with certain views, but I simply cannot escape the idea that if these people are given power, they're going to impose their view of things on me. And Tarek Fatah, for better or for worse, is often seen in the company of these people in Canada. Now, I've said before that it's not necessarily his fault, because the left-wing, or the progressive people in this country, who actually you would think have a lot more in common with him than the right wing would, tend to get out their 10-foot pole when Tarek Fatah comes along. And he's kind of ostracized by these people. So if anyone is to blame for the fact that he's flirting with the right wing, or he's allowing the right wing to sort of patronize him, I would say that it's the people who are his natural allies, the left wing, the progressives, the liberals of our society, because they don't want to deal with him, because they're afraid that he makes too many waves. He rubs people the wrong way. And it also points out an interesting possibility of a certain mindset that has taken hold, or perhaps is inherent in the Islamic, in the minority Islamic community anywhere, It's a community that believes that it has to stick together. I'm not saying that the Islamic community believes that it's at war with the larger community, certainly not. But it might believe that it's under some amount of pressure. And inherently, people stick together in a circumstance like that. And Tarek Fatah seems to be bucking this and saying that that is exactly the problem. This business of sticking together and not criticizing ourselves for fear of being accused of airing our dirty laundry in public. Well, again, one of the things that I find is that the larger society is just as much to blame for this us and them mentality as the Islamic community is. Because when you have people like Pat Condell or Geert Wilders or whoever thundering against the Islamic religion per se, not just against intolerance in general, but against the Islamic religion per se, that's going to have the effect of getting people to feel defensive and to circle wagons. That's guaranteed to have that effect. Even if your idea is to fight Islamic extremism and you decide to hitch your cart to Pat Condell or Geert Wilders' horse or someone similar to this, you're not making the lives of Muslims who want to fight Islamism any easier either by doing this. This is why I think that not only is Pat Condell, Geert Wilders, and people like that, not only are they actually morally questionable in their tactics, but they're actually rather stupid. If they actually want to fight Islamic extremism, attacking Islam per se is not the way to do it. When you do that, you create Islamic extremism. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong or anything. I'm just saying that that's what happens. If you want to fight that sort of thing, you've got to fight it on terms that will engage the larger Muslim community. And you don't do that by insulting Islam per se. That's not going to work. So, people like Tarek Fatah, liberal Muslims, end up in a very unenviable position in that they're attempting to sort of stand outside of their own community in the name of fighting Islamic extremism, but they end up in a certain way becoming intellectually backstabbed by large segments of the larger society. So they're in a very unenviable position. And that's how I think that people like Tarek Fatah end up being sort of rejected by their own community, because it looks as though they're siding with Geert Wilders, which they're certainly not. But when you have a situation of, where a community feels itself at least slightly to be under siege, that mentality will develop. And again, a siege mentality doesn't just come out of nowhere. There is some justice to that. There is some reason why the Islamic community might feel that way. An inflammatory, anti-Islamic language is responsible for a lot of it. A lot of it, I agree, is sort of self-created, this us and them mentality. But our hands as the larger society are not clean. And finally, I have to confess, I think that anyone who's ever watched my videos knows that I kind of have a powerful streak of iconoclasm in my character. Anyone who bucks the trend, anyone who goes against the grain, is likely to be the sort of person I'm interested in. And just so anyone doesn't think that I'm suddenly changing my tune and turning over or going over to the people in the Islamic world who are actually going against their own religion, I recently discovered Norman Finkelstein's famous exchange where he took on and, I guess, demolished in a particularly nasty way attempted mind games at, I think it was the University of Waterloo. Talk about combative and iconoclastic. Norman Finkelstein fascinates me, I must say. Again, he's in a debate concerning Israel, the Palestinians, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, any number of things all lumped together, and he's taken a stand that is strongly pro-Palestinian. I'm not anti-Israel, but I consider myself to be strongly pro-Palestinian as well. And I must say that exchange that I saw, and I've left a link to it, certainly impressed me. And again, anyone who's iconoclastic has pretty much guaranteed to get my sympathy. Perhaps that's just my character. Thank you.